Welcome to Face the State. I'm Ariana Bennett. Thank you for joining us. Well, although the city of South Lake Tahoe only has a population of just over 20,000 people, its numbers swell with tourists all year long for skiing in winter and beaching in summer. And those tourists bring a whole lot of money to the city, but they can also bring noise, trash, parking problems, and headaches for permanent residents. So the city has been implementing new rules and new fines to control the situation. So South Lake Tahoe Mayor Wendy David is here to talk about those. Wendy, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, so the tourism industry in South Lake Tahoe obviously is huge. Is it the biggest industry?
It is our #1 industry by far. We depend on our tourists, and the people that live there depend on the incomes that they get from serving the tourists.
So you're kind of in a difficult situation where you have this big industry that's a big money maker, but it has to be managed, right?
It does. It does.
Tell me a little bit about the situation that the city finds itself, with some renters.
With some winters?
Some renters.
Oh, some renters. Well, we have always had vacation home rentals in South Lake Tahoe. It's just part of living in a beautiful tourist area. And as the amount of vacation home rentals has increased and increased and increased, it actually has had a bigger impact on our residential neighborhoods. And so in 2017, we actually hired a business to do a socioeconomic study for the city because we were getting a lot more complaints, and we wanted to know what are the real impacts that it's having on our community. So Michael Baker, in concert with Sacramento State, did a socioeconomic study, and they tried to look at what are the emerging problems and the emerging good and bad from vacation home rentals. And we did that and got a report back in June of 2017 and found that there was a bigger impact because we had a lot more vacation home rentals. So many of our residential areas had more visitors coming more often, and we identified some of those problems. And with that, we've had an ordinance since 2003, but it's an ordinance that as we've gone through the years, we've amended and added to. And so we started looking at an ordinance that could maybe direct some of the greater issues that we were having while still preserving our vacation home rentals.
Okay, so when you're talking about complaints, what kind of numbers are we talking about? I mean, is it in the tens or is it in the hundreds?
Well, I wouldn't say it's in the tens, and I wouldn't say it's in the hundreds. But I would say in some neighborhoods, for some of our residents, it's more chronic because they may have a greater number of VHRs around them. And for that one person, that's a problem. So each time. And if you have new neighbors, just imagine if you lived in a house and every weekend you had new neighbors. And so those new neighbors might not know the rules and regulations. Before we had a warning system. So if you warned someone that came to visit, and so they got a warning and said, you really can't be in your hot tub after 10 p.m., then they would be compliant. But then next weekend, maybe you'd have another group of people come in. And then it was really putting the burden on the residents to call and say, okay, here we are again Saturday night, or here we are again Friday night, and I can't sleep because there's too many people in the hot tub. And so it's this balance of really wanting to, we want our tourists, we love our tourists, they are our economy, but we also want to respect our residents that live in these neighborhoods.
Okay, so the most recent change to the policy has been a $1,000 fine to the renter and a $1,000 fine to the homeowner for first-time violation with no warning. How did you arrive at that solution?
Well, we had several things that we had to consider. We have a group in South Lake Tahoe that are interested in bringing an initiative to ban vacation home rentals in our community. And so we looked at what are the issues that we need to face very seriously so that we can preserve our VHR industry. And what we found out the biggest problems were the noise, were the trash, and were the parking in the residential neighborhoods. And so by taking away the warning, we wanted to let people know that we want you to come and want you to be able to keep coming, and we want to make sure you know ahead of time We don't want to issue a $1,000 parking ticket. We don't want to issue a $1,000 noise ticket, but we do want that VHR to be able to stay in the neighborhood. And in order for us to continue to have VHRs, we felt like we needed to step up our ordinance and protect our neighbors as well. You know, I'm elected to represent my community, and my community are the people that live there full time. So I have to pay attention to them as well, and our entire council does.
Now, you know, some people have said that these fines are excessive, especially since they're not preceded by a warning, and you know, in some cases, what some see as a minor violation, like parking in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's any merit to that argument, that it's too much?
Actually, I think there is merit to that argument. You know, this ordinance just went in on December 22nd. And recently we just had our first report. What we asked, because we knew we were making big changes, we asked for quarterly reports. We hired a company called Host Compliance that I think is being used in many vacation home rental communities. And they give us really excellent data. And some of the data that we're getting back was that the majority of the complaints that were being turned in were for parking. And for some of those parking violations, it was being reported that maybe someone was just there for 30 minutes. Maybe they were that extra car that was dropping off luggage or something. So we think we really need to look at that perhaps again, and I'm hoping that'll come back on an agenda. Recently we just had a presentation, so it wasn't an action meeting. We're hoping it'll come back on a city council meeting where we can actually talk about that. And perhaps for something like parking, we need to look about what is the real impact, and can we look at perhaps something tiered? Can we look at possibly where you have a grace period when families are arriving and unpacking, those sorts of things. So this is new for us too. And you know, our vacation home rental ordinance is a living document. So we can go back and look at that. Since I've been on the council, I think I'm about 3.5 years in, vacation home rentals has probably been our biggest, most frequent topic. We've had about 20 community meetings about it. We have had several public hearings. It comes back to us frequently. And it is a complicated topic where you are constantly trying to balance your community, balance those that live in residential areas, and balance that with really wanting our guests to vacation like they want to vacation. And I don't know your experience, but I think a lot of people like to vacation where if they're in a recreational area, they want to bring their mountain bikes, they want to bring their paddle boards, they want to bring their skis, their snowboards, and their family. And this is a way that they like to vacation.
Yeah, I think, you know, the concern is that, you know, if South Lake Tahoe appears to be tourist unfriendly with rules like this, that it could hurt the industry, and so the tightrope you're walking is to not get that reputation. It
is a tightrope, and you know, personally, I'm not in favor of the initiative that would take away our VHR industry. That would have a much greater impact on our community. So looking like many communities, how can we have a VHR community that also is a good business for a business model that our residents can live with? One of the things we did, well, a couple of things. We have a tourist core area. In the tourist core area, we have no restrictions on the amount of vacation home rentals. And we're encouraging more of our development to be in that area because it doesn't impact the residential area. In our residential area, we put a moratorium. We had about 1,400, and mind you, we are a pretty small community, so that's a pretty high percentage. We had 1,400 vacation home rentals. We put a moratorium on that amount to let our residents know that we weren't going to continue to proliferate in their neighborhoods. And with that, we said we think enforcement could help solve this problem. Now, like I said, if we find that we overstepped enforcement in some areas, we need to continue to look at that and make adjustments, because we do appreciate and you know, I'm so lucky to live there, and I want everybody that comes there to feel that same feeling about this is a really special place.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we have just under a minute left. So is there a final message you'd like the viewers to take away from all this?
Yeah, I'd like them to know that, you know, South Lake Tahoe has always been a huge tourist community. We're going to continue to be a tourist community. Our economic development is all based on what would the tourists want to come and enjoy. And so I encourage everyone to keep coming. We're trying to be transparent with what we're dealing with and finding really positive ways of making it a good experience for the tourist, and also a place that our residents also feel safe and feel like they can have their peace and quiet as well. And it's a tightrope. We'll keep walking because we think it's important on both sides.
All right, Wendy, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you
appreciate
very
it.
much.
Well, coming up on Face the State, we will hear the perspective on this issue from a vacation rental owner, and that's right after the break.